All right, guys, welcome to this week's edition of the Sword and Staff Uncut. And so on today's edition, we're going to continue our conversation with Coleman. Coleman, how did you feel about today's episode? How did it feel to be on the Sword and Staff?
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. So, I enjoy talking. It's actually funny. My wife was like, this is like everything for you. She's like, it was like,
Just like everything
it's
for
not
you.
people having to listen to you talk. It's people asking for you to talk to them. So,
Right. This is everything for you.
Yeah.
yeah, it was pretty good. So,
Well, we were super glad to have you on. I know Ritchie
Yeah.
has been wanting to do this for a very long time. I mean, he's literally shouting you out in editions there on a weekly basis. So it was just inevitable. It had to happen at some point. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a lot of fun. There were lots of, extra details, which I'm happy to, walk through some of those things. I really wanted to make sure that we kind of saw the whole story arc with Father Padilla and all of that. That literally, I mean, it like just totally blew my mind when I actually saw that. I was like, no way. Plus, like, what kind of like mad street cred do you have for Kansas having the first Christian martyr, in the United States? So at least we've got that, So there's some cool stuff though. One of the things that in this, since this is the uncut portion, the extra details.
that's right.
That's right.
Yes.
There were some cool little notes that I found as I was digging into petroglyphs, and I think this kind of went across native cultures, not just ours, but they would also use crosses in a lot of their petroglyphs. But I thought this was super interesting. They represent stars, which falls.
Yeah, that's really
interesting. It
yeah.
falls.
I mean, one of the things that I've seen, especially.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, sorry. No, you're good. You're good.
Am I good now?
The internet. The internet kind of lagged there for a second. Go ahead.
Cool. At least it lagged, in the uncut. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry, right.
Sorry, everybody.
But yeah, I just thought it was really, really interesting, because there's this connection between stars and the cross. And, I think that
There's even a constellation, the Southern Cross. And it relates to the Southern cult. Like even one of their symbols was a cross.
It's almost like a solar wheel.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually have one. I'll show it to you guys that looks kind of similar to that. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very
so
similar.
Like that.
Yep.
You can see there's pockmarks and things in different spots again, because they were down in limestone. So
Coleman, if you don't go out to these petroglyphs and collect me some of those samples for my own sketchy workings.
I can't though, because they're
Probably on
all
private property.
Yeah, I'll get like taken out, because believe me, everybody in Kansas, especially out that way, has guns and they will shoot you.
I mean, explain the need.
Yeah. Explain the need. There's sketchy Ritchie.
We're like,
needs some of your limestone.
Yeah.
There's a guy in West Virginia.
Like I know a guy, a very sketchy guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. There was a creature that was in one of the petroglyphs as well that I saw, but I thought I would show to you guys because I don't know enough about monsters. But if that rang any bells, this is certainly not a human, and it's certainly not an animal.
No, I've never seen that one before. That one is fascinating, though. It feels very high lung to me.
Yeah, I was like, a lot of cultures have this horned deity that's representative of nature. Like you see it with
Pan,
Cernunnos and Pan and things like that. This forest god, and that's what it reminds me of. Like you see, it's like in paganism. It's weird because a lot of streams of paganism, they tend to even boil their beliefs down to monotheism. And it goes down to this singular god that is depicted just like that, with horns, like this all father sort of figure.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You can see the chest sort of has like scales and things too, which related to some of the water things.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Even the tail is kind of like merman or mermaidish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, interestingly enough, back, whether you believe in global flood or you believe in ice age or some amalgam of those different ideas and theories out there, which I believe the Bible, so I believe in a global flood. I don't know about you guys, but
yeah, we do too.
Kansas.
Well, I do. I don't know what Sketchy Ritchie does.
There you go. Kansas was under like a giant lake at one point, and that's how we got all of the limestone.
So, interesting fact about West Virginia: there used to be an ancient ocean in West Virginia, and there is a place called what is that salt works place?
Oh, it's our salt mines that we have. Yeah, it's a remnant of an ancient ocean, and you can
let me see what it was called. It's J.Q. Dickinson Salt Works in West Virginia. So they have salt mines beneath the mountain here, and they go into the salt mines and they mine this salt from an ancient ocean that is supposedly like millions and millions of years old. But they actually sell it, and you can actually buy it, and it's local here. They have a big place that you can go out and visit, and big storefront. But yeah, you can that. But apparently, West Virginia at one point was under a huge ocean. So same thing here.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
as you can tell, I'm interested in it for my own sketchy purposes, but we got some ideas for the salt.
Richie's slapping the salt mine, says you could protect so many thresholds with this baby.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the car salesman meme.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Like it's our own sketchy Appalachian blessing salt right here.
Yeah,
that's right.
Let's get that out in a re-enchantment box.
Okay, another cool one. May or may not be related to anything. I just thought, the book was like, well, look at this picture of an arrow. And I thought, I don't know if that's an arrow. It's a little tough to see, but you've got kind of fins there, but there's also fins right here on the arrow. And it kind of comes up into a head. And I showed this to my son. He goes like, oh, is my connection dropping again?
Oh, it's okay. No, you're good.
My son goes, oh, is that Lotan? And I was like, why is my kid so based?
Why is my kid so based?
Why is my kid so based?
Yeah. But yeah, so there seems to be this motif of water creatures, which feels real weird in Kansas, right? Because it's like flat prairie and stuff. But that actually gets me, this would have probably taken too long to jump into, and it might have been a little bit more boring, but let's be honest, the people who are paying want the boring stuff. So they want all the details.
It's true. They do.
So the Serpent Mound itself, where it's situated, how it's oriented, things like that, is similar in many ways to the other Serpent Mounds. Or I guess it's not Serpent Mound, Serpent effigy. I get the language right because it's not a mound. Here is like a sketch, like an old sketch version of it. But you can see the shape better. So this is actually pointed up towards the kind of let's see, that'd be like northwest-ish direction. And it's clearly got like the egg thing, right?
The egg, the seed that we see in these other depictions,
right. There wasn't any information about whether or not this was aligned like astronomically to anything. However, the mouth is aligned on the summer solstice, which was super interesting.
Wow.
And these two jaw lines that are coming off of it, there's another set of mounds. They're small, but they're basically like the excavation they've done. It's basically like these little cities that they are assuming based on the shape and, what they found and where this is at. And Josh is missing all of this. But they're basically like the dwelling places of the shaman and the culture keepers of the Quaviran Indians. And so those things are out in like like it's basically the mouth is facing those 3 other mounds, and you can't see my hand down here. I'm doing like motions. There's basically 3 other mounds that are out here farther in the distance, and it was kind of cool, the story, because it's like an old, they found this way back in the day, and they didn't have a lot of ways to figure these things out, so they took like light trucks out to these other mounds, and they did it at night. They took light trucks out to these other mounds and they shot them straight up in the air, so it had like the light beams.
Yep.
And then they looked from the jaw, and straight out from the middle of the jaw was the middle mound, and then bisecting the 2 outer mounds are the jaws. Wow. And so these are actually aligned to these, like, basically like the dwelling places of the cultural elites and the shaman of this culture. And so like that was pretty cool. Not totally unexpected to me, just because of what I've known from mounds and things. But where this is located at is like right on the edge of like a climate zone. I don't know if you're familiar with that. So like just to the east of it, there's a lot more rain. Just to the west of it, it's a lot more arid, and the rain is inconsistent. But just to the west of it is a bunch of buffalo, or was a bunch of buffalo. And just to the east of it was where they could actually like make little cities and plant agriculture and do that sort of thing. And so this mound is actually in this liminal space, this transition space of climate zones between these 2 environments that basically represented like stability and like normal life, and then chaos. And these culture keepers were the people who lived right on the edge of it and said, this is the bounds of the chaos. This is, all of that. And so you go to the west, and that's where, you don't know if you're going to get a meal, and you got to kill things to get food. You go to the east, and there's safety and there's comfort, all these different things. And so
and this serpent is like this monster on that marginal line, like,
right,
and you see
exactly
that
exactly. And what's interesting, right, is the question comes up, obviously we don't have mountains, we don't have hills, and so there's not a bunch of rocks to mound up or anything like that. But why is this construction so significantly different than the other serpent mounds? Right. Because this one is actually dug out into the earth. And so basically the idea is that this serpent is representative of the 2 sides. And so they actually scraped the earth out, and it's around all these natural springs and things. It's right at the headwaters of a river. So there's all these like transitional spaces geographically. There's these transitional spaces when it concerned weather. There's also transitional spaces culturally, like this. There's kind of boundaries of different nations and things around this area. So it marks all these boundaries. But when you would dig that out, it would fill with water, right? So it's literally a water serpent. Like a serpent made of water. But the significance of why the digging out and why they chose that is because around the natural springs where all the petroglyphs and things are to the west, that's where they would find the buffalo. And the buffalo, in order to get water, would scrape the dirt and make furrows. And so this serpent is built by furrows in order to like invoke the buffalo practice, essentially, and kind of join those 2 worlds. Which I just thought
it's like a it's like a participation in this creational thing. Like that's fascinating. It very much reminds me of the worldview that Owen Barfield, would talk about, where he talks about that in the ancient worldview, like if you like, he did a survey of human consciousness, and he talks about that in the ancient world, ancient peoples viewed themselves as being one with the creation, like that there was not a distinction between the thing, the object being known, and the knower. So there's kind of this collective consciousness, and and then he talks about as consciousness evolves over time, you kind of see that kind of shift, and that's where you start to get like an individualism and that kind of thing. C.S. Lewis actually wrote a poem on this that was influenced by Barfield, or the question, I guess, is did he influence Barfield or did Barfield influence him? But it was called The Adam at Night. And he talks about this very thing in it. He says, except at the making of Eve, Adam slept, not at all as men sleep now before the fall. Sin yet unborn, he was free from that dominion of the blind brother of death who occults the mind. Instead, when stars and twilight had him to bed, the dutiful owl, whirring over Eden, had hooted a warning to the other beast to the hushed till morning, and curbed their plays that man should be undisturbed. He would lie, relaxed, enormous, under a sky, starry as never since. He would set ajar the door of his mind, and into him thoughts would pour, other than days. He rejoined earth, his mother. He melted into her nature. Gradually he felt, as though through his own flesh, the elusive growth, the hardening and the spreading of roots in the deep garden, in his veins the wells filling with silver rains. And thrusting down far under his rock crust, finger-like rays from the heavens that probed, bringing to bloom the gold and the diamond in his dark wound. The seething central fires moved with his breathing. So basically it's this idea of, at one time, the consciousness of man seemed to be collective, I guess would be like Lewis talks about Adam setting ajar his mind and being rejoined with earth as his mother, to the point to where he can sense and feel the spreading roots going down deep into the garden, and that whenever the wells of the earth fill with silver rains, he feels the same thing in his veins. And then he talks about the central fires, beneath the earth, moving and being synced up with his breathing. So I don't, Barfield talks about this, and I don't quite have 100% agreement with Barfield on all of this stuff. But the thing that's interesting, though, is the serpent mound that you're showing there kind of almost from a level of consciousness kind of depicts, though, what they're aiming at. Like that there is this collective conscious thing going on where they are participating in the same things as the beasts are.
Yeah.
And they're using it for like these culture making purposes, I guess let's call it. So there's a really interesting connection there with that. I'm sorry, I had to nerd out for a second.
No, you're all good. It wouldn't be Sword and Staff if Josh wasn't reading something. So
right, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think there is certainly like a participatory thing. I think there's certainly like a certain level of like relationship that they understood to the elements as in like the classical elements sense, right? So one of the things that we talked about in the episode, talked about how there's these different depictions of like this water monster, water spirit thing, right? And the potential connections to the water panther. So this is my conjecture, okay, based off of what I looked at, and I am not obviously like a Native American historian or anything like that, though I am a quarter Native American. Spoiler for everyone.
He's not going to let anybody forget that.
That's right. A whole quarter. A whole quarter.
Lay out those credentials, baby.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's an undisputed fact. Yeah. We're not questioning that at all.
So, but here's what I think was kind of going on here, right? So you've got this like very embodied practice of using the serpent structure, right? And it's
Yeah.
an intaglio, so it's like dug out and it's furrowed, and like you're being like the buffalo that gives you sustenance to the west, and
Yeah.
you know it's going to fill with water, which is what is necessary for the agriculture to the east of your people and things like that. And you know you're high on lime dust because you've done this, but the significance being that these holy places or these spiritual places, these places of water, you know, that depict this creature. You know, if you look at the I don't remember the name of it. I have it listed as Ojibwe. No, something else. The water panther, essentially. You look into water panther lore and the way the mound builders used it. The water panther was the one who was said to be the master over snakes. Right? And so he's the master of all water and water creatures, including snakes, right? So you have this snake that you have created. Let me know if I cut out, but you've got the snake that you've created through these embodied practices of the region that you're in, and this liminal space that's kind of digging into the different sides of this liminal space. And you're high not just on limestone dust, but limestone dust of the water panther, who can actually make the things you're trying to get to happen. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I have come to think about the connection between these places is, you know, they were doing some sort of spiritual practice, invoking this water panther, you know, and then going and doing these cultural practices that are embodied to try and like support their culture and get the water they need to survive, but also embody the meat, you know. So which would make tons of sense with just all of the things that we know, and then, you know, the way that all of this is set up. So
yeah, that's fascinating. Even thinking about the serpent and the symbolism of the serpent, like the serpent itself is a liminal kind of animal, right? Like it's out on the margins, and then
well, it literally comes up from the ground. That's what I read a lot. That's where that comes from for them, is like the snake lives in the earth where the water is,
right,
where the underworld is.
I mean, we see that in Appalachia here. I mean, you can go find a snake den.
Hold on. I'm going to correct you there. Appalachia.
No.
I come on your podcast. I disrespect you.
This is blasphemy.
It's blasphemous.
But like, even think about the serpent though. Like, it's an animal that's kind of in between, because it sheds its skin and then it becomes a new version of itself, right?
Yeah.
So like it's a liminal character just by the nature of what it is. So it is like all of this stuff fits together perfectly.
Yeah, there was an excerpt from that PDF that I had posted in the Discord. So again, if you're somehow, you know, a patron and listening but not in the Discord, I don't know what you're doing. But that PDF, it was really funny to me, you know, and just an example of how little is known about all of this is the PDF that I found of the study that they did like years and years back, decades back, is on the internet, and it's literally called 164.pdf. Like there's no, like, I don't even know how we found it, but there was something they were talking about how, oh man, I wish you could find it. But basically they were talking about the accounts of the conquistadors and things as they were traveling through the area, and how serpentine everything was, right? And so you'd have these shaman, and these shaman would come up and they'd have like snake skins all over, and they'd have you know, all that. And so so that makes tons of sense, you know, given all of the symbolic meanings there too. But what I thought when I was reading those things and understood, what happened to Father Padilla and the conquistadors, is I thought these guys came in, and similar to, how people probably felt when they came up on the Aztecs and saw human sacrifices and stuff, they're like, what the demons, right?
What the demons?
Like, we gotta reach these people. Like, this, whatever is happening here, this is bad,
Yeah.
And I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It is. Yeah. And we've kind of, it's interesting that you bring up the shaman dressed as a serpent, because we've ran into that here with the Southern Death Cult. In a lot of their iconography, they have shamanistic priestly figures.
Yeah, they have the serpent priests.
Yeah, they've got serpent priests that are in like liturgical snake uniforms, for lack of better words. And it's really interesting too, because in a lot of the rituals, especially that you see in the ancient world, they were initiators of people who would initiate others into liminal space, through a lot of their rituals, especially in their like coming of age rituals, right? Like where you take a young man, you take him away from his mother and from comfort, and you put him out into the wild, and he's got to learn how to bring order to the chaos, that kind of thing.
Needs to clean his room.
He's got to clean his room. That's right. Yeah. Just clean your room. Stand up straight.
That's right.
Stand up straight.
To the chaos.
Yeah. It would be. Yeah. There has to be a Jordan Peterson reference here somewhere.
Well, you were quoting Barfield and sounding awfully Jungian. So.
Right. Yeah. No doubt. Yeah.
Had to bring some balance there.
Yeah. Yeah. You had to throw Peterson in here if we're going to get Jungian. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you can see that the serpent is it makes sense of why those figures would wear those types of liturgical vestments, right? This is an initiator of liminality. What better way to depict that than with a liminal figure, right? One that represents order and chaos and death and rebirth, because that's what the shedding of the skin is, right? It's moving from the old, it's death, moving into the new. It's like death and resurrection. And a lot of the symbolism has layers to it. The serpent is a chaos, it's a chaos monster. It's associated with the margins, but it also at the same time, you see in scripture where it's the serpent is lifted up, and those who look at it find life as well. So yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense, like in this worldview, of why these figures would be depicted in that way, and why this would be used in a liturgical way that it is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when Coleman was talking about the serpent out there being filled with the water.
Right.
And it's a life-giving serpent. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I think the important thing is that, you can have serpents that are just built up with rocks that don't do anything, or you can have cool serpents that fill up with water. Like we have out here,
Wow.
Yeah. There you go.
I gotta sell Kansas, Yeah.
We're all the time selling Appalachia for people, so
fair enough. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm literally telling people to just move here and go to New Haven Church all the time. So, so I can't hate on that.
Yeah,
can't hate on that.
I mean, we're literally starting a cult community out here where people are moving out. And
Richie's on the uncut. He's just biting his tongue, trying to stay out of trouble.
Oh, I know.
Like, I want to start this reptilian death cult, and we're all going to wear snake-like vestments. And
no, we're not.
It's going to be.
Hey, there's no need. The United States government already exists. Okay.
Exactly.
There you go. Perfect.
Like Hillary Clinton is somewhere right now in a reptilian vestment.
Well, she doesn't have to have a reptilian vestment.
She's in a human vestment, man.
Yeah, that's right, man. Yeah.
Jokes. I have no intentions of anything that she may be associated with.
Wow.
In case this gets out there.
No, this ain't gonna get out there.
My name.
This is why we have the uncut
Epstein,
section, so we can basically just say whatever we want to say.
There's a real palpable fear of the wrath of the Clintons and their serpent overlord.
Well, they're from our area, so Bill Clinton was born in the same town my dad was. So.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's no wonder there's a serpent den out your way.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, it gets weird out here. It gets weird. We didn't even get into like other weird stuff, like the typical haunting weird things. But as I dug into this was a lot. This had a story, so.
Right. Yeah. And I love the way that you connected it in with the gospel and showing how that story participates in the great story. So I thought that was awesome. Yeah. We'll have to come back and do another episode at some point, I'm sure, to get into all of the weirdness that is out there in your area.
Yeah.
And
all
that.
We're planning on doing a monthly feature where we bring our patrons into a Chinwag edition and just talk about weird stuff. So
just whatever we want to talk about. So that's definitely
count on it every week.
Every week. Every month.
Even though I would be down to do it every week.
Oh man. Well, I gotta do I've been itching for that, memes is magic. I started filling that out and I was like, oh man, this is just everywhere. This is like, oh
yeah.
So
I thought that was what we were doing. I thought that's what we were doing today.
And we can do a guided class on how to make sigils out of your memes and focused intentions.
Listen, people don't need guided classes. They're already doing it. They just don't know it.
The ultimate sigil in the cross.
That's right.
You're right. Yeah.
Well, cool, guys.
You're frozen.
Am I frozen?
He's smiling. There you are. Good deal.
Am I still frozen or am I good?
So you froze up on us there, Coleman. You're back.
Good.
You're back.
I'm back. Okay. Cool. Well, this was good, guys. I probably ought to jump off here and eat some dinner before my meeting tonight. But
okay. Yeah,
appreciate you having me on, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
As long as I have not overstayed my welcome or gotten you in trouble or anything.
No.
Or you haven't gotten me in trouble.
That's what I was saying. It's probably the reverse.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's probably the reverse. So. All right. Well, good deal. Well, Coleman, thank you so much for joining us for this week's edition of the Sword and Staff and for doing the Uncut section with us. And guys, we'll see you next week.